In the last lesson, we learned about the exponential height fog and we discussed a few settings as well. We also discussed how exponential height fog is not just a fuzzy, cloudy sort of layer in your scene, but actually it also contributes in giving a general viewer an idea that any object that we have in the scene in the background is actually pretty far away from the camera. In simpler words, it contributes to give your scene a little bit of depth, okay? Now, this was the end of Unreal Engine's default lighting setup in which we use directional light, exponential height fog, sky atmosphere, skylight, and volumetric cloud to light up the scene. Now, there is actually another lighting setup that we can use to light up our scene, and that would be with the help of HDRIs, okay? So, in this lighting setup, what we're going to do is, we're going to download an HDRI from an online resource such as polyhaven.com, and then we'll bring that HDRI into our project before actually using it to light up the scene. Now, of course, I'm going to demonstrate that how you can actually bring in an HDRI to light up the scene and all. But the bigger question in here is that why do we even need to use an HDRI to light up our scene? Isn't the Unreal Engine's default lighting setup enough for our scene? Because right now, it looks good. I don't see any sort of problems with the lighting in the scene. So why do we even need an HDRI? Actually, Unreal Engine's default lighting setup is more than enough for our scene. But sometimes what's going to happen is you're going to find yourself in a situation where you need something very unique for your, let's say, volumetric clouds, or let's say some sort of ambient light in your scene or anything like that. And this is where the HDRIs come in really handy if you're looking for something very specific. For example, some sort of overcast lighting, or let's say you're looking for a night scene, or if you want something very interesting sort of clouds in your atmosphere. So in those situations, HDRIs can be very useful. Now, even with an HDRI in the scene, we're still going to use a few elements of the Unreal Engine's default lighting setup, but HDRIs can give us some very interesting looking sort of clouds and ambient light in our scene, okay? So what I'm going to do in here is to go into polyhaven.com and let's look for an HDRI. So here I am inside polyhaven.com. Let's select HDRIs. And in here you can see we have several options that we can choose from to light up our scene. Let me just scroll up. Let's say if you want some really interesting looking clouds such as this, you can download this HDRI and simply and very easily use that in your project. Same is the case for, let's say, this one. If you're looking for something like this in your sky, you can use that. And similarly, if you're looking to create a night scene, you can use this one as well. And you can use this one as well for an overcast lighting. Same is the case for this one as well. Let's use this one. And in here you can see we have this really nice looking pinkish sort of sky simulating a dusk atmosphere, okay? So I'm going to download this HDRI for now, but in the coming videos, we're going to use an HDRI such as this one to create a night scene as well. So I'm going to now simply just select this one. 8K is more than enough for us. And make sure you have selected HDR and simply click on this download button. And once this is downloaded, we can go back into Unreal and bring this HDRI into the project. So I'm going to go into content and let's create a new folder. I'm going to rename this as HDRIs. And I'm going to click on import, go into downloads, and I'm going to select this HDRI. I'm going to click on open. It's going to take some time to import. And then I'm going to save everything. Okay. Now, before we actually bring in this HDRI into the scene, I'm going to go into edit, plugins, and I'm going to search for HDRI backdrop and make sure this add-on is enabled. I'm going to close this one, click on this add button and simply search for HDRI, and I'm going to drag this thing and bring this into the scene. You can now see that by default we have this HDRI to light up the scene, but of course we're going to replace this one with the one we just downloaded. Let me cancel this and let's see. I'm going to first up hide everything that we have beforehand to light up the scene. And let's reset the location of this HDRI. Okay. So right now we only have this HDRI to light up the scene. If I hide this HDRI backdrop, you can now see our scene looks pitch black. But if I unhide the HDRI backdrop, you can now see our scene is illuminated. Okay. So right now this HDRI appears to be pretty small as compared to our scene. So what I'm going to do in here is to move this panel up and increase the size to, let's say, 1000. And I think 1000 is not enough. So let's type in 1500. And let me see. Yeah, I think 1500 works for this one. So now we have this HDRI into the scene. Let's replace this HDRI with this one. I'm going to simply just drag this and drop it inside this cube map. And now, as you can see, we have this cloudy sort of HDRI in our scene. Okay. Let me split this window and let's see how this looks like with our shot. Okay. Yeah, it looks good, but of course, we're going to have to do some adjustments. For example, it looks too bright at the moment and we can barely see any clouds in the HDRI. So what I'm going to do in here is to bring down the intensity. I'm going to bring this thing down to, let's say, 0.5. And now the clouds are fractionally visible, but I think we're going to have to bring this thing down even further. Let's try 0.25. Yeah, I think now it looks good. Okay, so we can rotate this HDRI as well. For example, if you want these clouds in our shot, so what I can do in here is to very simply just press E to bring in this rotation gizmo and rotate this thing around in our scene. And maybe bring in just about, and maybe rotate this thing just about there. We can also adjust the projection center as well. For example, let's say, I think this is probably too high. So I'm going to type in 500, sorry, negative 500, or maybe negative 1000, something like this, perhaps. Let's see. Yeah, I think it looks pretty interesting, as you can see in here. So maybe I should just rotate this thing like so. Looks interesting, but one problem that we have in here is that our scene just doesn't look so illuminated. I need to increase the lighting intensity fractionally so that I have a little bit of more light in the scene. So of course, what we can do in here is to simply just increase the intensity from here, and now we'll have some extra bit of lighting in the scene. But the problem with this slider is that it also increases the intensity of the HDRI backdrop, and we can no longer see those good looking clouds in the scene. So what we can do in here is to keep the lighting intensity to 0.25 and then add a skylight to add a little bit of more illumination in the scene. Okay. So what I'm going to do in here is to simply just select the skylight, press Ctrl D to create a duplicate of the skylight, and then simply just move this to a different folder. Let's say I'm going to call this as HDRI overcast. I'm going to drag this HDRI backdrop and drop it inside this folder. And I'm going to move this folder out of this one. Now we have this folder in which we have HDRI backdrop and skylight. I'm going to make sure that all the lights are disabled in here. And what I'm going to do in here is to select the skylight, bring this thing up, and I'm going to uncheck this box, real-time capture. I'm going to change this to specified cube map. And I'm going to drag the same HDRI and drop it in here. Now you can see we have a little bit of light in our scene. Okay. So now what we can do is we can simply just adjust the amount of light that we want in the scene by using this slider. It's not going to have any sort of impact on the clouds that we have with this cube map. Okay. For example, if we want to increase the intensity, we can simply just increase this to 2, and it's not going to have any sort of impact on these clouds. But for this one, but for now, I think 1 is pretty fine and it looks good. Okay. So I'm going to save everything. So our scene now looks pretty okay. We have some clouds in the scene and we have some good illumination with the skylight as well. But as you can see, that one thing that we still lag in here is the exponential height fog. You can see that we no longer have that haze or mist or fog in the scene that we had beforehand with the default lighting setup of Unreal Engine. So what I'm going to do in here is to simply just go into this environment lights folder and create a duplicate of exponential height fog by pressing Ctrl D and simply move this thing to the HDRI folder. And now you can see we have this very good looking fog or haze in the scene. Okay. So this is how you can light up a scene by using HDRIs. Now, one more thing that I'd like to mention in here is that you can also use a directional light with this HDRI as well. Not specifically for this one because this is an overcast sort of lighting, and I don't really want a shiny sort of sun in my sky with these dense overcast sort of clouds. But in some situations where you have some sort of, let's say dusk or sunrise or maybe even a sunshine sort of scene, you can use the directional light in those situations as well. What you can do is you can simply just create a duplicate copy of the directional light. Okay. And let me bring this thing down. And, just simply control the intensity to whatever you want, depending on the scene, depending on the shot. Okay. For this situation, I really do not want to have a directional light in the scene because this is an overcast lighting setup. And as I said earlier, I don't want a bright sun in my sky with these clouds at the same time. So that is why I'm not going to use directional light for this one. But the point that I want to explain in here is that you can also use your directional light with your HDRIs as well. Okay. So that's it for this lesson. And in the next lesson, we'll discuss some more lighting parameters. So I'll see you guys in the next one.